An ego has a function. Ego, and it's very simple, is to keep you alive. That's it. It's survival. But as the physical survival has become less important, it's become emotional survival, an emotional sense of well-being, and your ego will guide you in the wrong places. Once you recognize it's not you, it's just a voice in your head, then you can learn to manage it.
Today, we're joined by a visionary entrepreneur, author, and thought leader helping people thrive in a time of unprecedented change, Ben Lytle. Ben is a self-made serial entrepreneur who's founded or co-founded 7 successful companies, including 2 listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Most notably, he built Anthem, now Elevance, into a Fortune 100 company valued at over $100 billion. With a background in psychology, law, and decades of leadership in healthcare and insurance, Ben has also served on state and presidential healthcare commissions and major public boards. His work is now focused on helping others navigate what he calls the new reality, an era of rapid transformation in how we live, work, and grow. He's the author of the Potentialist series, a collection of guides designed to help individuals adapt, lead, and realize their full potential. His latest book, The Pursuit of Wisdom, challenges readers to think deeper, live with conscious intention, and most of all, make wiser decisions throughout life. The 3rd book in the series, Predator and Prey, is due in 2026. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Matthews Mentality Podcast. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming all the way out to Nashville, Tennessee. I mean, we're going to cover your career, but you've spent so much time in what I call the healthcare industry. Right. Obviously, Nashville's a center for that. And then today, amongst many things, writing this series, the Potentialist series. Again, we're going to touch on what you've done over your career, but let's just dive in and let's talk to the audience about the Potentialist series.
Okay.
Where was the inspiration from it? Was there a moment where, what really drove you to say, I have to do this? And just talk us through what is the Potentialist series?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was, from the time I was a teenage kid, fascinated with science fiction, fascinated with the future. Later in my 20s, discovered this thing called a futurist, which is people who do analytics and research and look at history and project from that and current innovations and things like that create the future. So I'd always had that as an interest. The other thing was in it when I was 20 years old. I took an elective course in the summer at a college, and I had no idea what it was. And I was a business major at the time. This course was called Introduction to Personality. And the very first thing that a very charismatic young professor, this was the 60s, so he had very long hair, and he was really a cool guy.
What college was this?
And then it was East Texas State University. It's now part of Texas A&M.
Okay.
And we a small class summer, so there's only about 15 of us. And right off the bat, he said, "You do not have to be anything that anybody wants you to be. That means your parents. That means society. That's not what life is. If you want to live a real life, your job is to discover who you are and what you can do, your potential, and then live it. That's it." And it was like, it was an epiphany moment for me. I just went, wow, nobody ever said anything like that. Well, that led to me, and then I got to know the guy. The guy gave me a reading list, and I became a potentialist. I mean, I made up the word, but and of course, there's so much out there written on it, and so that was really the background. But so it shaped my whole worldview. So to me, being an entrepreneur was, what can I create? What can I do with this idea? Leadership meant helping people discover their own potential and live it. And so it literally guided everything I did. And so one of the parts of that, one of the practices I developed over the years was every year, for me, right after the first of the year, some people who've asked me about it, decided to use their birthday. That's good too. And I sit down and spend 2 or 3 days It's usually over a week, but I make sure that it's my priority during that week to really reflect back on who am I? What am I missing in my potential that I could do better? Well, when I did that about 2010, 2011, since I track and I'm always looking at the future, I started to see where we were headed. And we were headed for something like a new industrial revolution. That's what I thought it was at first, but it's much greater because it is really going to expand human potential like nothing we've ever seen. And everybody thinks it's just technology. It's not. It's a combination of forces that are changing it. Depopulation, fewer people living longer. Yeah.
And you're referencing AI as we
Right.
call it, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So AI is one of the technologies, but it's AI, it's neuroimaging, which is telling us how the brain operates and what it does at different parts. It's quantum, which is coming on fast, and it's the fact that we have global communications now, and so all of those are technologies, but also it's depopulation, it's democratization. Most people don't realize in the arc of history there is a direction to change. Most business leaders don't. A lot of government leaders don't. It's always been what drove change, and that is democratization. And thought of simply, it's taking something that only the few have access to, making it available to many, and ultimately turn it into a commodity, and that lifts society.
Yeah.
So the printing press, fire, steam, all of those things, energy, all of those things do that. And democratization, we can see it in what the technologies we have now does. It accelerates democratization. So that's what you're seeing. That's what you saw happen in retail, completely reshaped retail. It's happened in entertainment. It's happening in everything. So democratization is going to reshape the world we know. Now, it has a flip side. Not all of it's good. It's got a flip side. It destabilizes institutions because they can't change fast enough. So every institution that we have, social institution, is less respected today than it was 10 years ago. Now, people didn't go stupid. They just can't keep up. So we're changing faster. Who they serve are changing faster than they can respond.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to have to invent new versions of every institution, government, mass media, education. All of those are going to have to be remade. So that's what makes this such a powerful time. We're destabilizing the industrial age, which is mostly what our society is built around, is going away. And this new age of the expansion of human potential is coming. That's what my books are about. And I realized back then, my own family doesn't understand this, and they are smart, good, great. My children and grandchildren, they're really accomplished people. They don't get this, and if they don't get it, probably nobody does. I researched, there were no books written on it, a lot of books on the future, but that's all they do is talk about the future. They don't say, how do we adapt to it? And I knew from studying, past times of great change, the people who were prepared and adapted, they succeeded wildly, while those who were fearful and dug their heels in and didn't do so well. So I said, we can do better this time, and that's what these books are all about.
And your first book was Your Future in the New Reality of the Next 30 Years.
Right.
Then the second one. Do you know how many books are in the series? You don't
just three. No, just three. Yeah, and the I'm gonna run out of time. So yeah. But three's really, I think, will do it. So the simplified. The first book says, "Here's the new reality," and I describe it. It's what it's.
What year did you write this?
This is published it in 2022.
Got it.
It took me 6 years to research this stuff. So and then to put it together. So 2022 is the first book. 2023 or 2025 was the second. 24 was the second book, and 2026 will be the third. The first book says, "Here's the new reality," and then it laid out 7 things. If you'll do these 7 things, you'll get through this. You'll be successful. But it's sort of the basics. They're all wise things to do, but they're basics. The second book postulates that the new superpower, how you thrive in these times ahead, is you make better decisions. In life, it's always been true, but now it becomes a requirement because you're not going to have the institutions to guide you as you once did. And you're going to have to figure a lot of these things out. And a lot of questions that have been asked, we're going to have to answer questions never asked of human beings before. So there's no precedent. And they're going to be very individual questions. How do I integrate with automation in a way that it doesn't degrade my humanity? It enhances my humanity. That's a pretty tough question. You got to figure that out. That's going to take wisdom. How do I decide what's real? How do I make a good decision when everything I read and everything I see can be a fake? How do I do that? So that's what the second book's about. How do we make good decisions? That's what wisdom is making the best decisions throughout your life, because your decisions define you, define your relationships, and define how you impact the world. The third book is going to address why at this point, with all the progress humanity has made, do we still have such an issue with instinctual predatory behavior? What is predatory behavior? Well, it means taking, when you impact somebody's humanness, what makes them human. So the obvious one, the one we all go to, is when I deliberately injure somebody, either emotionally or physically. That's predatory behavior. But it's more subtle than that. If I rob you of your goodwill, of your free will, by not giving you the ability to make a choice, then that's predatory behavior. So you can kind of see that. So, I think I can see a lot of people like that in politics. I can see a lot of people like that in sales. That, a great salesman's an educator, right? Mm-hmm. And helps the client make the best possible decision, and they'll love you for that. But some people think, no, it's deceiving. It's slipping by. So it really explores predatory behavior and the impact on society that it has, and how could we change it? And I think we can.
What about called the Potentialist? Or as you said earlier, I became a Potentialist. Mm-hmm. That may not have been what it was called at the time.
No, it wasn't.
But when I hear potential, I think of it in like athletic terms. You describe athletes like, oh, he has so much potential, or she has so much potential, and it's often used as sometimes when you're really young. You mean it positively. Like, oh, they really have a lot of potential, but further into athletics, especially college and the NFL, it's more like, he's got so much potential, but there's always this attachment that they're not using it. Mm-hmm. And I say this to my kids sometimes, mm-hmm. my sons or daughters, like, oh, you have so much potential. How, as a potentialist, or how did you realize, okay, I may have more potential, but where do you find the energy to, metaphorically get off the couch and go do it? Because like fulfilling your potential is hard. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. And part of that is, in my humble opinion, push back if you think I'm wrong. It isn't something you can get done in a week or a month or a year. I mean, it takes years, and in many cases, lifetimes. Like, how do you, mentality-wise, find the energy to say, whatever I'm meant to be, whatever my potential is, I'm going to get the most out of it?
Great question, and it's one of the most important things I think that's in my book. And it's a theme that runs throughout because I've lived it, and I know it works. And in the process of these years of studying this, I interviewed over 400 people that I consider to be very wise. Never used those terms. They all said pretty much the same thing. And it's in the first book. It's the last chapter, chapter 11, about success. What is success? And I argue that success is not money, fame, power, good looks, any of that stuff. They're not bad things, but that's not it. Success is when you lay your head on the pillow at night and you did your best. Yeah. You did your best to be your best. And if you think about the great coaches, they all say that. All I want from you is your best. Well, that's what you should want for yourself. And you don't destroy yourself when you do. If you didn't get there today, do it tomorrow. But that literally, to this day, before I came over to this show. I looked in the mirror. I said, today, I'm going to do my best to be my best and leave the world and the people I meet along the way a little better than I met them. I found them. That's it. That's how you measure yourself. What is your potential? In the second book, I define it very specifically, though, in terms of what, because it's a requirement of wisdom. And that is, you know the difference between you and your ego. Your ego is not you. It is a function of your personality. It's not you. And until you separate yourself from the ego, you will consistently be unwise, because your ego cannot be wise. It's impossible. It will be very self-serving, but it's not wise, and it won't make the best decisions. And so that's fundamentally what you're after, is that blend, that combination of you living in this world and the combination of you, the part of you that wants to do the best for everybody as well as yourself. That fusion is what creates wisdom.
Yeah, you talk about success, and I very much agree with you. You know, I think you said, when you lay your head on the pillow, did I give my absolute best? Did I give everything I had? I've talked about, at least my philosophy as it relates to giving your best is, and happiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is when you give everything you possibly can, and you know it. It happens less frequently than I think most people would care to admit, but there's few instances, whether it was in a game or a season athletically, or you know, a job, a occupation you have. Of course, you love to win or find what most people call success, like a tangible kind of material success. That makes it better. But even in the situations where I knew I gave everything and I knew I gave my best and I laid my head on the pillow at the end of the night, even if that day we played a game and I lost, I didn't like losing, but there was this weird satisfaction that existed. Again, you're not happy that the outcome wasn't what you wanted, whether you didn't get the promotion at work or you didn't get the win in, you know, the game, but there's just weird satisfaction that exists when you're like, well, I gave everything I could.
There you go. That's it, Kyle.
And opposite of that, there's this emptiness, there's this dissatisfaction, there's this, I call it the worst feeling. It's regret, especially when it doesn't go your way, when you don't get what you want and you lay your head down on the pillow and you're like, and you know deep down, you're like, I didn't give everything I could. And it just eats away at you. It eats away at you and it never stops. Even, again, sticking with sports analogy, even when you win the game and you walk off the field, you're like, I didn't give it. There's this kind of, it just eats away at you. There's this like gnawing feeling.
Well, and for young people particularly, this is such an important message. You're a dad, I'm a dad, you know, trying to, and I thank God my sons and daughter really, I think, did get this, because I know I taught them that from the beginning. Money, fame, power, good looks, all that stuff's transitory. When you age and all that's going to go, and you'll finally get to a point where money doesn't mean anything anymore, and those ultimately, they're not bad things, but that's the reward from doing your best. It's not the goal. And if you get those confused, it's going to cause you a lot of grief, because then you'll think, well, if I just have more money. Well, you don't realize what you're chasing. Somewhere in there, you didn't give your best. And your best is not, as you know, not just achievement. Your best is doing it in such a way that you left the world and the people you met better than you found them. Pretty simple measure. And it's easy to measure on a daily basis. And sometimes you're going to make mistakes and you have to forgive, because you can only be as wise as the information and the maturity you have at the time. You don't always have all the facts, and you never will. Another thing a lot of people confuse is, well, if I do all the right things, life won't be hard. No. Adversity literally is what creates how our minds work. It is what shapes us. And so that's one of the things you teach in the second book. I talk a lot about the law of polarity, and how the law of polarity is what makes our brains work. It's what makes the universe hold together, where their resistance between two polarities causes a creative solution. That's what makes us, one of the things that makes us human. So you're going to have adversity, and it's how you meet it shows a lot about who you are.
It's funny as a parent, I've never met a parent, myself included, who says, adversity is bad. I don't like it for
Right.
my kids. Everybody's like, oh no, adversity is how we grow and get better.
Exactly.
Yet as parents, even myself, like our instinct is to protect your kids from this adversity. It's a constant battle, especially, I'm generalizing here. I'll speak for my kids. Like, they really growing up in a nice, they have a nice life to where you almost have to manufacture adversity for them. You have to create it even when it's not there. And yet, as soon as you see them facing adversity, your natural instinct as a parent is to step in.
And a grandparent.
And as a grandparent, yeah. So, all right. So speaking of, I guess overcoming adversity, but really getting the most out of your potential, and you may say you did not, but certainly your career suggests. Let's get back to, so you're in college. You have this professor kind of introduces you to this concept of potential. You become a potentialist. You graduate college.
It became my avocation and my North Star. That's really what happened.
And so how did you end up in the healthcare business?
Yeah, so I was an IT person, as that's what put me through undergraduate school, and I was and got into IT at a time when everybody was young. Literally, there were no old people, older people, and old was 30 at that time. So I became a manager at 21 years old. So I was a good technologist, and I became a manager of a bunch of technologists at 21 years old. So I went through undergraduate school working full-time nights and going to school days, raising my two boys, but I did well. So when I graduated, I got another great job up in Indiana. It was in the big finance company, and I worked for them for 5 years. And then I wanted to go to law school. And so I was admitted to 3 different schools that I liked, but the one in Indianapolis had a night school, and that would work best to advance both my career and go into law. And I wasn't sure I wanted to practice law, but I liked it better, and it was actually the CEO of that finance company that recommended I do it because as an alternative to an MBA, because the MBA I was taking was boring me to death. And law was fascinating. Turned out to be a huge thing in my career. So I went to law school, came down to Indianapolis, started out work for a bank for a couple of years, and then was recruited by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Indiana, which was just down the street. First time I got in healthcare, and I became CIO first after a few years. And finished law school.
CI, what was the
I'm sorry, Chief Information Officer.
Because I didn't know if that meant investment.
Thank you. No, Chief Information Officer. I ran IT, which at that time was one of the biggest divisions in the company. And then as a complete surprise to me and everybody else, because I was the youngest executive in the company, and I'd been there the least amount of time. I'd been there six years, I think, by then. Out of the blue, I was made Chief Operating Officer. I was leaped at 36 years old over people 20 years older than me, and put in charge of the number 2 guy in the company. Did that for 5 years, and then was named to be designated to succeed the CEO.
So much of what we'll talk about today has this just undercurrent of the whole time potential, right? Maximizing your potential. Why do you think, in your opinion, and you've had time to look back, do you think you leapt a lot of people to become a 36-year-old COO, which, again, I think culturally at the time, young executives was not in vogue the way it probably is today.
No, it wasn't.
And then eventually become the CEO in waiting. Like, what was it that, in your opinion, led whoever it was, maybe it was the CEO at the time, to make that decision? What do you think he had seen in you to give him that sense of confidence? Because I'm sure there were people it upset. Yeah.
Well, first of all, was that I had turned around the IT department, which was crucial to that's crucial to health plans, and it had been a mess. It was just a mess, and I turned it around, made it really one of the leading performing divisions. The second was I had ideas. I had ideas for how the company could use technology to lead, and I was probably one of the few. There were 22 guys at my level at that time, and I was asked to give a presentation to the board, and the presentation went really well. I think he looked at law school, and he was one of my 4 huge mentors. Brilliant man, and he actually, when I graduated from law school, I'm CIO. He shows up at my door. Now the CEO didn't show up at my door, or anybody's door that often. And he sits down and he says, "So, Ben, getting ready to graduate from law school?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You thinking about practicing?" And I went, "Oh gosh, no. I'm going to get fired. I got these 2 boys in high school. I got to get them to college. He's going to fire me as soon as I tell him, but I can't lie to him." And I said, "Yes, sir. I've worked hard for 5 years, and so I've got to use it. I want to be a real lawyer." And he sat back and he said, "I think we can work that out." And he allowed me to work half-time. He said, "You got a good number 2?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "We'll put him in place, work half-time as a lawyer." Brilliant move on his part, because he probably knew I was going to learn. I didn't want to do it. And I did pro bono for a law firm. I did all their pro bono stuff. It was great for them, great for me. I got to do so many different kinds of law. But I think he saw that, and he thought I had ideas. I could do something, and that's what did it.
Were you, as you were, I guess 22 to 36, was a 14-year period? I mean, as you were, quote unquote, climbing the corporate ladder, were you building a family as well?
Yeah,
at the same time?
I had 2 boys. And when I was young, everybody got married young. I mean, there wasn't a single person. If you weren't married with kids by 21, very different than today. And so I had 2 children and 2 boys, young, and so they were growing up, and they had a really good. I was single for a good part of that. I was a single dad for most of their growing up time, but they were great kids, and so it was my 3 sons of the old TV show. That's what it was. So I was I was a very involved dad, and still am.
Well, that was part of my question. So I'm making assumptions here, and perhaps I was wrong. It's like, okay, you're shining professionally to be moving up this ladder, and oftentimes that comes with a lot of hard work and hours, especially back then, because technology wasn't the way it is today. You could go home and still be relatively effective. You have to be at the office a lot. Then you're going to night school and getting a law degree. Then you're doing 2 jobs, right? Pro bono work, but you're still the chief information officer. And then you're a single parent. Like, what did that reality look like? How did you manage it all?
Well, the one thing, there's things that you didn't work for. You just got them. You got lucky. And one of the things that I got from my dad was a freaky level of energy. And I don't know how it's freaky to me. It's still at this age, it's freaky. But at that age, it was.
You're one of the guys who only sleeps 3 hours, and
and functions well, and so I could do a lot. So, for example, when I went to law school, I was a dad. I went to class, but I'd be home by not long after the kids, and I had a babysitter there till they got to be teenagers, and I'd be home by 6:30, 7 o'clock. I'd be with them, do whatever we did. About 10:30, they'd go to bed. I'd start studying. I'd study till 2 in the morning. So from 10:30, 11 till 2, I'm studying law, and because it takes a lot of book work, and so that same energy carried forward, and thank goodness my sons were. We lived in a place where they were athletes. My oldest son, I think, still perhaps the only high school quarterback with 3 state championship rings.
Hey.
And my younger son was an all-academic wrestler and football player. That had a lot of help because the coaches helped raise them. And we lived in a township where the deputy sheriffs all loved sports.
Yeah.
And they would, if they saw my kids out late, they would say, "Hey, Lytle, go home.
Yeah.
You got a game to see."
That's funny.
So I had lots of help by the community raising them, Franklin Township in Indiana, and they were great kids. I mean, they were typical kids, but they were great kids.
What do you do? Did you grow up a Notre Dame fan in Franklin Township? Like,
I'm sorry?
you grow up a Notre Dame fan?
No. We really, I don't know that we had a team. I mean, we had Cowboys for a long time because I was from Texas.
Because you're
and
from
that
Texas.
Yeah, but my sons, followed it more than I did.
I was thinking if your kid...
I mostly enjoyed being a sports dad.
Oh yeah, no, that's
much
the
more
best.
than being a spectator of sports.
No,
that's kind of like,
that's the
if I don't
best.
know them, I can't get too involved.
So I think I heard, I can't remember who they were talking about. It might have been the current president. Maybe there's a gene where like 3% of the population has this gene that allows them to be highly functional off 3-4 hours of sleep. That might be you.
Yeah, I today I could sleep as much as I wanted to if I can't sleep more than 6. I mean, on average, I try, and I've gone to sleep study, guys. 6 is about it. That's all I'm going to do. And other people will need 8. I need 6. And in my peak, I was doing on 4 or less.
That's pretty wild. Yeah. I mean, if you're not feeling tired, I wouldn't say that's something you go fix. But
right, it's a metabolism thing.
Yeah,
it really is, and it applies in my fitness as well. Because I'm in advanced years for a lot of people. I'm 78, 79 years old, and I just went through a bunch of tests, longevity tests. They put them in groups 70 to 80 or 60 to 80. I'm the top 5% of all of it.
Well, good for you. You thank your father, right?
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
So you were named CEO in waiting. Is that eventually what happened? You became the CEO?
Yeah, and it was a very key step in how Anthem became. How we built Anthem into this this company and Accordia. So the CEO, who was clearly my advocate as well as a great mentor, he did something very unusual. He had me designated as his replacement 2 years before he retired.
Yeah, and that was odd. Especially back then. Now I think again culturally,
and it was because he wanted to make sure, for number one, he wanted to make sure I didn't leave because I was being heavily recruited, but also he wanted to make sure there's no horse race later and that kind of thing. So when he did it, I asked his permission for it. I did this, but he announced it at the board meeting. The board all voted yes, and I said one thing, and everybody went, "What?" Here's this 36-year-old guy, or no, by then I was 41 or 2, whatever it was, and he's this young guy, and he's questioning this. I really wasn't. I just said, "Look, I'd like to make one condition. I want the next 2 years to build a strategic plan. Company's really never had one, and we just had to react. And I want to build a strategic plan because I think we can build something fantastic here." And I gave him, I think we can be a national company. I think we can grow. I think we can consolidate Blue Cross companies. I think we can diversify successfully. And I think we can pull this off. And I want an opportunity to present the plan. You don't have to approve it, but I want an opportunity to present it and know you're open to something that's very bold. And they all said, okay. That allowed me to build the plan, which ultimately built Accordia and Anthem.
And summarize, what was that plan?
Essentially, the company had 2 huge challenges. It was at that point a Rust Belt state. And so, and health plans depend on headquartered companies, and we were losing headquartered companies, and the population was virtually flat at that point. So we needed to get out of Indiana, but the Blue Cross license was state by state. The second thing is we needed to diversify. At that point, what ultimately became called Hillary Care was growing, and they were very clear, we're going to eliminate health plans. Well, that's what we were. We were a mutual insurance company, so we had an obligation like a shareholder company. We had to go out and build. We couldn't let it go away. So I looked at what we didn't have a lot of money, a lot of capital to go out and build something or acquire something. So I had to come up with a way we could grow, build a diversified company, and grow in the healthcare business without a lot of capital. Well, being a lawyer, everybody else didn't know you could do this. You can actually merge mutual insurance companies and no money changes hands. You just get the vote. The people vote to become a bigger company and vote to get together. So I thought that could work. Turned out there were 14 Blue Cross companies that were mutual insurance companies. And ultimately, I was able to convince 3 of them to merge. And we went from $1 billion to $6 billion in revenue like that within 3 or 4 years. Second thing was, and then we took that capital and we acquired a lot of not-for-profit blues because we couldn't merge with them because it's a different corporate form. But we acquired a number of not-for-profits that weren't doing well. The other side was I studied what insurance business, because you want to stay, when you diversify, you want to stay as close as you know to what you know. What type of insurance has the largest margin, requires the least capital to get into it? It was the insurance brokerage business. True then, it's true today. It's a great business, but you have to, because brokers are always going out on their own, building their own, then they sell. So that's what we did. So we invested, I think it was $35 million of Anthem's money, and we turned it into a $600 million asset.
What was driving you at this time, 20s, 30s, early 40s? Obviously it helps, having the energy and all that.
Right.
But what was really your motivation? And sometimes that could be multi-layers. Like what was getting you up in the morning and giving you the energy?
It really was a belief that, and it's still true today, but that it was going to take, the Blue Cross companies at that point were too diffused. We started out, there were 135 Blue Cross companies, and clearly they needed to merge because it wasn't even state by state. And you had Blue Cross companies, Blue Shield companies. And so they needed to consolidate to get strong because United was a new public company and it was growing like crazy. Other mutual insurance companies like Aetna and Cigna decided they were going to get out of being, first they were multi-line, they were going to sell off all of their non-healthcare companies, business, and become a healthcare company and go public, which is what they all did. And so I'm sitting there, look, they're going to have capital, they're going to kill us. So we got to have bigger Blue Cross companies, stronger, that can compete with these guys. And of course, that's what Anthem does. It competes very effectively. It's second largest.
So I asked the question of your motivation, and you just did a great job explaining kind of a professional motivation from a strategy perspective.
Right.
I mean,
you mean me personally?
Yeah.
To build I like to build, and I'm an innovator. And I knew from studying the arc of history, which is something I've been studying for my whole life, what improves the quality of life, and it's really important people understand this, it's innovation far more than people of trying to do good works and charity. I mean, those are good things, so I never want to just diss that. I'm not saying that. But if you look at impact, it's been innovations that really make the world a better place and lift humanity. That's what drives me then, drives me now, is how can we do that? Because we can be better. One thing I believe, and I strongly, and I think these next few decades is the greatest opportunity in history for human beings to elevate what they are.
What they're capable of.
Every one of us. And it's an individual choice. It's not government's not going to do this, education's not going to do it. You have to decide, I want to be something that, right now even blows my mind what I could be. And by integrating with automation in a wise way, we can do that. We can literally become what would be superhuman. Now that sounds, pretty far-fetched, but if you took who we are right now and went back to 100 years ago, 1920, they would look at us and say, oh my gosh, these people never get lost.
Yeah.
Oh, these people
we'd be
know
like,
everything.
We're like aliens to them.
So now you just take that and multiply that by 50 times.
When you were CEO of Anthem, I think it was all the way to 2000, was that during that time, did you end up taking it public?
We took it, the company, I was chairman of the board when we took it public, and we because I didn't want to take it public, and then leave. I couldn't do that. So I moved to chairman
Well,
of the board.
sometimes there's restrictions there too.
Yeah.
I mean,
And so-
every time.
Right.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I'll be chairman of the board. That's when I put my replacement, who I'd been grooming, in place, and we took the company public. Accordia, I was CEO of it when it went public, but not Anthem.
And Accordia was the brokerage platform,
Right?
Insurance brokerage, and you simultaneously were growing, or the CEO of that as well as
Anthem for a period of time till I found my replacement, and he did a wonderful job. A guy named Frank Wattoon.
We have a large business audience, professionally focused audience, if I may.
Right.
And I think speaking on their behalf, but this is true certainly for me. My guess is for you, but again, you'll tell me. A lot of times when you go into business, or let alone you start a company, you kind of dream of the liquidity event in that moment. Financial anxiety goes away, and so. That may have happened earlier, but certainly when you go public, oftentimes there's a moment where the 20, 30 years you put in at Anthem, it kind of all comes together.
Yeah.
What was that moment? Was there that moment? And what was that like, to where at least you felt that you had financial security, which ultimately, and I'll get to this, allowed you to walk away, where most people were like, you're crazy to walk away. You're like, well, I have money. I'm okay.
Right.
What was that like? And, how did it stack up with your expectations?
Well, yes. So I think, first of all, very different situation with Accordia, which we were building as a diversification vehicle. Once that whole Hillary Care threat went away, it didn't make sense for us to own it anymore. So we sold it. But Anthem, I never intended Anthem to be sold. And it hasn't been. And every CEO afterwards, thank goodness, has come to the same conclusion. One of the ways I was able to build Anthem was I went to, because remember, we're losing headquartered companies.
Yeah.
And I went to the governors, two governors actually, one, and then the leaders of the legislature, and I said, look, I believe I can build a national company. We were a Fortune 500 company here in Indiana, and I will commit to you if you help me build it. Not favors.
Sure.
Just give us a fair regulatory environment.
Yeah, give us a good
Treat
environment.
us like we're not a freaking enemy. Then I can do. I believe we can do this, and I think it'll be significant as an employer and to have a headquartered company in Indiana. It's today the largest company in Indiana. It has been for a while, and except and not depending on how you measure it. Eli Lilly is the largest in many ways, but it's a significant company. And thank goodness, I always refused every offer to sell, every offer to merge, go somewhere else, headquarter it differently. So far, thank God, every CEO has felt the same way. That we built something enduring, and it's really meaningful to the industry and meaningful to the state and the region. And so that was important to me. But it was a great celebration, and I loved it. But you're right. I had one of the very wise people, and this is in the book, about how do you get enough money. Mm-hmm. So that you can say, people used to call it go to hell money. It's, but how do you have enough money that you never have to worry about, let that make your decisions anymore? And a very smart guy that I knew who ran a small local brokerage, I became friends with a guy named Gene Tanner. And and he taught me, I told him, I said, Gene, I've never had any money, I'm starting to make some bucks now, and I said, this is back when I was a chief information officer. How do you manage money? And he taught me, and he says, he taught me all the basics that are in a chapter of the book. And, and it's amazing how many people today in the United States still don't get the basics. You don't invest in stocks, you invest in the Dow. Mm-hmm. And you watch it over time. You don't try to play stocks. You let somebody who knows what they're doing do that for you. And then you get enough bond money. You take enough bond, and you create that, and you put that in a vault. Yeah. And that's the way I think of it. And that's the way Gene called it. He says, you think of that as a steel vault, and you don't go in there ever. You just put money in.
Yeah, the 60-40 portfolio or whatever they call
And
it.
so what happened was, by the time, and then ultimately the other thing I figured out, because I had a lot of wealthy friends in Indianapolis and in other places as well. A lot of them ruined their kids. They ruined their grandkids. They destroyed them because they gave them too much, or they thought they had to. I decided there was only so much money I ever wanted to have. Now, that is probably weird. And it helped me because of my value system. I didn't want an airplane. I flew all over private airplanes when I was building Anthem. Of course, I hated it, got sick of it. Don't think it's cool at all. I'll take a first class seat any day.
Oh, you're the only person I've ever met who said that.
Yeah, no, there are others. One of my friends who is worth several billion dollars. His wife refuses to. They sold their plane and won't
At the
fly
risk
on
of
one.
coming across poorly, I think that's the one luxury that is actually worth everything else. You're like,
Well, it is
the
in business.
efficiency.
It is in business.
Yeah.
But now you got to think. Okay, what is this going to teach my kids?
No. That's totally different.
Right?
Business wise, to hop on.
I have tried very hard as a father and as a grandfather. There ain't going to be no trust babies in this family. And not that you're going to always, and it didn't mean you don't get a little help here or something like that, but to get education, particularly to help you reach your potential. But I set a limit for how much I needed and I wanted. And so went out, and that allowed me to say I don't have to run big public companies to make the living I want, and that allowed me to go out and build 4 successful businesses with my sons. Great fun,
Yeah.
And we've done all right. We've made some money too.
Yeah. And so part of the reason I asked this is kind of knowing your story, admittedly before we showed up, so I get a little home field advantages. That allowed you to ultimately decide to step down when.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of other people, at least on the outside, were like, what? You're crazy. And just from a financial component, you're like, you should stay and get more.
Well,
and you were just like, I don't need it.
The board, some people on the board thought I was having a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And I assured them this was a plan. And they even brought Gene Tanner in. This has been his plan for 10 years.
Right.
You know? But I had to ultimately, and they kept laying more money on the table. It's like it's not money. It's like opposite of what I want. You know, what I want to do is I want to be the best grandfather I can ever be, because I was already starting to have grandkids. I want to be the best grandfather I can be. I want to travel the world and understand the world better than I do today. I want to go into business with my sons, and I want to be that fit old guy who's running around still doing stuff with his grandkids when he's 80 years old. And I've done it.
What
not 80 yet.
Not yet, in all fairness. What year was this?
So this was 1999. Yeah, 2000.
Was it roughly 2010 when you came up with the idea of writing The Potentialist?
Yeah. So, and that really came about, like I said, from this sitting back and because all my life I've developed these, what I call them, innovation feeds. So I'm watching what's going on in healthcare. I'm watching what's going on in tech. I'm watching what's going on in neuroimaging, things like that. And I was beginning to see this stuff because what makes an industrial revolution or the Renaissance or all these things is when those things converge all of a sudden. And I was seeing a convergence occurring. And when that convergence occurs, big things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Big things happen. So for the forces of change, population decline and aging, democratization, the shrinking of distance. Think about that. Since the beginning of time, distance mattered a lot. Where you lived, where you raised your family. Now it's becoming less material all the time. Now think about what that's, I mean, we already see it in where people work at home and all that kind of stuff. It's just the beginning. I think it is just the beginning of a level of mobility that we can't imagine. And so those are the forces that are changing, and deinstitutionalization. People are more powerful, institutions less powerful.
Well, you've successfully built and sold multiple billion-dollar institutions, if I may, companies. What is something that you've seen in your positions of leadership that on average just tend to be common in the people who do really well. Okay. Professionally, personally,
Great
just
point.
where you're like, gosh, like anytime I run into someone who works for me who has this quality, like they tend to really thrive.
Well, one of the things is in that second book, and I'm
Yeah.
not pumping the book, it's just there. I gave what I think is the most detailed description of wisdom that you'll find anywhere and the characteristics of a wise person. And that's what, to me, really separates people who may be financially successful, but their life's a train wreck, or they're financially successful for a while, or they're professionally successful, but they're not very fulfilled. And so I would really refer your readers to that second book and pay a lot of attention to what makes a person wise. Because wise people at the end of the day are the best of humanity. They're the very best. They're our pinnacle today. They're what we should all aspire to. And they have certain very distinct characteristics, that they do think it's in their framework to do what they want to do, but also do it in a way that helps other people or at least doesn't hurt them. They are very, they're usually funny, surprisingly. Wise people are usually really clever, really funny. They're happy, and they're insightful, calm. They always have a calmness. I can't tell you the number of people who have said this about my mentor. They said it about me because he was a very wise person. I like being around you because I feel calm. Now, there's interesting thing about that. And so those are just a few, but also I think they're pragmatically optimistic. There is no such thing as a pessimistic wise person. Because if you really look at history, and it's so sad that, a majority of people in polls the last few years were not optimistic about the future here and in Europe. And it's just, you're going against the facts. If you look at how far humanity's come, and people think, oh, people are horrible today. Well, wait a minute. About 100 years ago.
That's a function of the algorithms and the tech platforms.
Yeah, you're right.
Our natural kind of reptilian brain draws us to things that create fear. It's why we stop and look at car accidents.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if you look at the actual data of homicides and assaults and just...
Well, a little over 100 years ago, people were taking kids to public executions.
Yeah.
First of all, we don't have them. We don't have very many executions. We sure don't do it in public, and nobody would imagine you'd lose your kids if you did it.
Yeah.
But that was a norm. And so the societal norms today have come so far, but we're only at the beginning. So anyway, back to your thing. I think if you really look at the definitions of what makes a person wise, those characteristics,
wisdom,
that'll be and the best people I know in business and government and other thing were those folks.
I always like to ask the question opposite. What is the most common challenge people had to finding success that you've seen in a position of leadership? And I'll take one answer off the table: being unwise.
Yeah.
What else?
Ego.
Ego
will wreck you. Ego is not ego has a function. Ego, and it's very simple. It's to keep you alive. That's it. It's survival. But as the physical survival has become less important, it's become emotional survival, an emotional sense of well-being, and your ego will guide you in the wrong places. Once you recognize it's not you, it's just a voice in your head, then you can learn to manage it very cleverly. By the way, there's some, one, and there's a great test for folks. It's a great test of your ego. How do I know my ego? Because some people go, I don't know if I know how it's separate. And I said, well, let me ask you this: do you speed in cities? Speed,
like from a car?
In a car. And they go, yeah, everybody does. I go, okay. Let me ask you: is that a rational act? Of course it's not. You got a GPS. You have to go a lot of miles to get there any faster. You'd have to drive 90 miles an hour to make a difference. So it's not rational. Now think of all the bad things that happen when you speed compared to when you don't. That tells you how to spot your ego. Your ego is always irrational. And you are rational. And St. Ignatius said that man is a rational creature, therefore he should act rationally. What he was saying was, a wise person, the real you inside, is smarter than that. Your ego makes you act stupid.
This is great news. I don't have an ego. And I'll tell you why.
Well, you got one, but maybe you're managing
No.
it. Yeah.
Well, now I guess I do by saying this. I'm the slowest driver.
Yeah.
Like it
There you
bothers
go.
people.
Smart thing.
You know, if the speed
Wise thing.
limit's 65,
Yep.
I go 64.
Yep.
And again, there are rare circumstances like, you know,
You'll make a mistake.
my daughter's
or,
game and I left the office late and I make a rational decision to speed because there's there's so many times I'm in a car with someone and they're driving and I go, dude, slow down. Why were you speeding? He's like, well, you know, to get where I was like, are we late? Is there something? We'll get there 5 minutes later, but like we have plenty of time.
It won't be material.
And it creates anxiety because you know.
And so you can remove that anxiety from your life. But here's the another really powerful thing about that little simple thing. That's how you learn to recognize your ego is different from you. So when you go to the car, you say to the ego, you get in the back seat. I'm driving this time. It sounds simple. One of the wisest guys I ever knew. Every day he'd come home, came home from work, and he said, I would walk my ego to the door. And I say, you go sit on the front porch. I'm going to be with my wife and kids. Now that sounds silly, but when you make it real, what you do is you put it in its proper place. And it will follow your orders when you consciously tell it. So that's a lot about how, and the really wise people I met, all of them had a clever way of recognizing that's not me. That's a function in me, and it's different.
This is great. No ego.
Yeah.
Hear that, Zach?
An ego under management.
Zach's got to take back every bad thing he said about
an
me
ego in its proper place. That's okay.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good explanation, but I've never heard the analogy of driving to ego, but it pencils. Getting back to the changes that are coming, you know, since you were, I think, 22, you're a potentialist, but a futurist, right?
Right.
And there was a gentleman you said wrote great books. I think it's
Alvin Toffler.
Toffler.
And he actually
you
became
feel
a mentor. He spoke at my board. He really nailed it.
Yeah. Can he foresee like what stocks to buy or who's going to win the Super Bowl?
No, he was,
on it?
But he did predict, he understood democratization is what drives change. It's the direction of change. He understood that ultimately his books were all about the pace of change. And that once the pace of change accelerates, institutions and larger organizations will struggle like hell to keep up.
That's so true. And you said, it was great. You said earlier, they just can't keep up. And so I don't remember the exact what you said. Basically, it kind of rattles institutions. And that's the risk.
Right.
Is that institutions, for all we rail against them, there is a very valuable place they play of just keeping structure, right?
Right. And they won't go away. They'll reinvent themselves as version 2.0.
You hope they do. Yeah, it's kind of, well, I guess they all do, but it's the time between 1.0 and 2.0 that's the disruption.
Well, and what happens, this is the hardest part for institutions to recognize, and this is very Toffler-esque, is democratization is the march of humanity. And it's a good thing. We get good things, everybody gets them. Like with AI and world communications, we'll ultimately be able to educate everybody in the world. High quality education, everybody in the world. Wouldn't that be a fabulous thing?
It'd be awesome.
And it'll become feasible now. It is feasible now. But he saw that coming, and what it does is it raises individuals, and institutions become less important. They've always told us what to do. If you go back 600 years ago, it was mostly the church and royalty, and they said things like, you can't trust people owning land. Individuals can't own land. Well, they wouldn't be good stewards. We have to take care of it. Well, we did okay. reading. Oh, why would they need to read? We tell them everything
We
they
tell
need
them
to
what
know.
they need to know.
Yeah. So this is what that march is occurring, and we're in right now. And you go out and look at every survey, every single institution, government, mass media, healthcare, education, all less respected than they were 10 years ago. And you can see them making very unwise decisions
Yeah.
because they've lost touch with their constituencies.
And you, as you have access to more and more information, you start to realize what they're telling you is either wrong or not
in your best interest.
Not in your best interest, you know, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
All right, what do you think over the next decade will be the biggest change in terms of our experience and kind of living our day-to-day that the audience should prepare themselves for?
Boy, it's hard to say the biggest, but I would say the pace of learning. That we're gonna learn faster, and you and I talked a little bit about this before the podcast. That the pace of learning will accelerate in a way we can't even imagine, and democratize. So you'll be able to learn anything you want to learn, anytime, any place, in the way you learn best. And that's gonna radically one-on-one with whoever you want to learn from. So the future of podcasts is your alter ego will have one-on-ones with those people in your audience who want to talk to you. Think about that.
Like an avatar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll do your show, but then they'll have a way to talk to you and ask you questions about things in the show that they didn't get a chance to ask. What a marvelous way to learn. That's just an example. But I think the pace of learning is going to be, and a good example is somebody told me the other day, and I haven't fact checked this, but that right now ChatGPT is the 5th most hit website in the world. And so we could conceivably think about, I mean, think about it in this context, which we don't tend to do. Imagine right now, there's hundreds of millions or maybe billions who are learning at a faster pace than they've ever learned in their life. Boom, 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 boom. That in and of itself is a rocket ship, and it will alter the world. So that's just an example. There are so many things, but if we can conceptualize my hope is the biggest change, is that human beings as a cultural norm start to recognize we can be much, much greater individually and collectively than ever in history.
Yeah, we got up on the screen right now the list of the most visited websites, June 2025, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, ChatGPT.
Yep. And
what's that? 2.5 years old, right?
Yeah.
I'll bet I will be interested to see Google's future.
Me too.
I know they're trying with Gemini, but I haven't Googled anything in 6 months.
Me either.
Why would I?
Why? Yeah, why?
Just something as simple as how it lays out. So before, if I said, what are the 10 largest healthcare companies in the United States, right? I'm preparing for.
You had to wade through the advertising. Right?
Well, there's the first three, it's the ads. And again, eventually these models may have ads as a way to widen because it takes a lot of energy to run these and tokens, right? And eventually they're going to have to figure out how do you provide this to the masses? And I don't just mean Americans, but like people around the globe without charging them for it. It'd have to be ads. But then let's just get rid of the ad. Let's just put the 3 ads at the top of the Google search aside. The first 10 links, you gotta read the link, you gotta look at it, you gotta click it, say, is this actually answering my question?
Right.
I have to, as opposed to asking ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini or whatever model you want to use. And if it actually kicks back something that misunderstood your question, you're just like, no, this is what I meant.
Yeah.
Then it does it again.
Yeah.
And so.
And I think,
And that is learning.
Yeah, it is.
Your point.
And it is absolute learning. And the future, though, I think will be in bounded models. because bounded models are different than internet-based models that need advertising. They got to have revenue.
Yep.
In a bounded model, the primary purpose is whatever you're trying to do. It's to educate. It's to provide health care. And a bounded model is fundamentally different in that it only loads the data you need for that function. So that allows you to keep it from being contaminated by the internet, and it eliminates the risk of being contaminated.
So
if you need something from the internet, you do it under
So
very
in a sense,
controlled
like a closed
circumstances.
model,
Yeah,
that's been trained specifically for your industry or for your line of questioning. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, or just you. You know, you can build one of yourself.
This has been a fascinating conversation. I could talk about the future. 'Cause I'm late to the game. So I remember there was an agent at Matthews. It was like November, was it 22 when ChatGPT came out? 22, 21 November?
Yeah, 22.
And they texted me like, hey, have you seen this? And it was like 5 days after. It's like, I uploaded a lease to it and it abstracted it. And I saw it and I clicked around for about 30 minutes, but I did not, I said, it looks like there's a bunch of mistakes. I would never rely on this. And so I would say I identified that as like, wow, this is really interesting. This is definitely different. Where the mistake I made was I dismissed the pace of improvement. I dismissed how quickly it would get, because I was like, no, these are legal documents. 15, 20 years before I'd ever rely on a AI, quote unquote, a language model to abstract a lease, right? And within 12 months, it was arguably as good, if not, because even humans have human error. They call the language model, they hallucinate, which they do sometimes. Well, so do humans. It's called human error.
But you won't, that's the thing about bounded models. They won't hallucinate. I can take what mine does, put it on ChatGPT, and it goes to being about 1/3 wrong. Mine's 100, almost 99.5, and I can make it 100 if I just curate it enough. So that, and a good way to think about it, you run this very successful business. Think about creating a bounded model that has your institutional intelligence.
Well, we're not thinking about it, we're doing it.
Great.
Yeah.
There you go. That's what you should be doing, because that's what's going to really change business. And as we in population decline, you're going to lose a lot of that talent.
In a real estate, not to bore the audience, in any given year, we present 20,000 proposals, like to an owner. And in those proposals, they have their rent roll, they have their expenses, they have demographics, jobs, like, so again, real estate. So that's 20,000 a year going, and we have everyone going back 10 years. So that might be 250,000, probably less, 150,000, because we were smaller when we started. Plus everything that's on the internet that you could crawl just now with AI agents, and you could take all that information, put it into your, kind of your knowledge hub, your knowledge base, and then use a bounded model, to your point, use the trained close-ended model that you've kind of designed for real estate. The amount of data that thing could mine and the speed at which it could mine it, it would take 100 humans 100 years combined.
Absolutely.
We couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. All right, last thing. In addition to picking up your books, the Potentialist series, Your Future in the New Reality of the Next 30 Years, The Pursuit of Wisdom, and coming soon, 2026?
2026,
Predator and Prey. Okay.
Yeah.
What other resources, where else should someone be looking to get the most out of their potential, and also prepare for, kind of what will be a massive evolution in kind of how we experience life?
Well, I think the main thing is pay attention. One of the worst things is people that just put their heads down and just don't pay attention to what's going to happen. And then they're surprised when we have things like a COVID epidemic, or they're going to be surprised when they suddenly turn around and they can't get stuff done because there's not enough people out there anymore. And it's already starting to happen. But if you don't pay attention, you're not going to be ready for those things. So number one is pay attention. I think learn to use a large language model. I personally like Grok, but I use different ones. And really get used to what that is. Don't approach it with fear, but approach it with, I want to learn. And then there's really good programs around your own personal growth. I think the whole mindfulness thing's a good thing. There's a lot to be learned in yoga if you do it right. And I'm not a practitioner, but I've seen what it can do for people. And reading some of the really great work, people like Pinker, and who they've written wonderful things about human potential. So there's lots out there. If you just take a large language model and say, give me 5 books about human growth and give me 2 books about what's going to be happening in the future, and stay pragmatically optimistic. Fear will cause you to make bad decisions every time. And pessimism will cause you to miss opportunity.
Yeah, pessimism is bad. You touched on it earlier. It's hard to be effective professionally, let alone as a leader, if you're pessimistic. It just
doesn't work.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, that's a big pet peeve of mine is pessimistic, negative people, energy vampires. Ben, this is fascinating. Congratulations on all your success professionally as an author. I'm excited to see what the future holds and get the most out of my potential. I just have to learn how to sleep 4 hours a night. So I'm gonna start working on that.
No, that's a bad thing. Don't do that.
Yeah, but you know what I'm doing? I'm gonna call my dad and blame him. Like, you gave me. Wasn't there a Sydney Sweeney thing? I got good genes. Yeah. My dad gave me bad genes. Bad genes. My dad wears bad jeans. Just so if he's listening.
Well, it did have one. I'll tell you a quick story. It did have one downside. I had a peptic ulcer and bleeding peptic ulcer, and almost died at 17
and that
years
was from
old.
Your dad too.
At 17 years old.
Can't have all the upside and the downside.
I was working myself to death. So, and that's become something I've had to learn to manage, is know when to shut it down. That's been a hard thing for me to learn. And it's something I'll have to manage my whole life, because my predisposition is to just push harder.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, Ben. Well, appreciate you coming out to Nashville. This has been great. And I'm excited to see when the 3rd book comes out.
Thank you. And thank you. It's been fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, be sure to follow Ben Lytle on LinkedIn and the Potentialist series on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can also visit potentialistfuture.com to see the videos, read the articles and blogs, and sign up for Ben's newsletter. And if you found value in this episode, don't forget to follow me on X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just search Kyle Matthews CEO and catch more inspiring conversations on the Matthews Mentality Podcast, wherever you listen. Ben, this has been great. Thanks again for coming in.
Thank you, Kyle.